Hello, this is Anik Matern. This is number 0681, the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File Program, number 0681. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File Program, you'll meet Michael Fenster, better known as Chef Dr. Mike, who is both an interventional cardiologist and also a professional chef who practices and teaches culinary medicine. What is culinary medicine?
Certainly nutrition is part of what we do, but culinary medicine is so much more. We're really looking at not just the nutrition, but all of the elements that go into that food experience. And that even includes sustainability when we look at sourcing our food, for example. How is it raised? How does that impact us? How does it impact the planet? All these sorts of things and many other kind of softer edges of the food experience, how we eat the food, with whom we eat the food, etc., impact our health in one way or another.
Entrepreneur and philanthropist Josef Azam talks about the work he does to help those who are less fortunate to get a hand up, especially the youth.
I actually set a separate team together. All they work on is philanthropy. So they reached out to organizations all across North America and Europe that fit the types of individuals we want to speak to. I ended up speaking in the past year to over 5,000 underserved youth, spoken with junior achievement centers, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, educational school boards. I mean, you name it, I've probably spoken to it at this point. And I've also gone into these areas like the south side of Chicago, Jacksonville, Florida, very rough, impoverished areas. And it's been the greatest thing that I have ever done in my life.
Bob Salem is only one of 4 people who has ever managed a particular feat. He pushed a peanut up a 14,115-foot mountain in Manitou Springs, Colorado, with his nose. Of course, we had to ask, why?
Let's see. It was mostly because it was out there. I was on Facebook. Michael Mayo from the Manitou Springs Heritage Museum was on Facebook explaining just exactly Ulysses doing it in 63 and, the other 3 guys and stuff like that. And he's like, boy, I wish we could find somebody that would do it for the anniversary of Manitou this year because it was the 150th. And I was like, well, I'll do it. And he was surprised. I was surprised. Everybody was surprised.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, and of course, an idiot of the day, the guest slater. The person who told you this was show number 0681 was Anik Matern, who is an actress and an acting coach. I've had the chance to see some of her acting showcases, and she does some amazing work helping to turn some of the students I've seen into major acting stars. You can find out all that she does by going to her Facebook page, which you'll find linked to our show page for this week, which she just mentioned. See how this all comes around full circle? Yeah. Thank you very much, Anik, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File Program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Coming up, it's time for The Stuff. Actually, before we get to the Stuff File news, I have a couple of things that I want to mention. I already said that Anik Matern is an amazing actress and acting coach. Now, when I ask people to do an opening slate, most people send one finished take. Some voice people send me 2 or 3 to choose from, and they're usually all perfect. But whenever I ask Anik, the consummate actor that she is, she sends a plethora. This time around, she sent 9, count 'em, 9 different perfect takes in just about every possible accent. I already played her natural voice, but I thought I'd have to place at least one more onto the show, so here's another.
Hello, this is Anik Matern. This is number 0681, the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. And it comes to you right now.
What more can I say about Anik? She's a sweetheart, and I bow to her talent. Also, I want to welcome a new radio station to the Stuff File program family. CHSR 97.9 FM in Fredericton, New Brunswick is now playing our little show on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Thank you for picking up the show, and welcome to the club. Now, on to the stuff. 27-year-old Sean Stewart of Snohomish County, Washington, has been doing a lot of fishing lately, but not for the aquatic specimens that Washington is already known for. Instead, Stewart has been using a rodent glue trap attached to a fishing line to take money out of night deposit boxes around the area, said Jason Toner, who is the chief of the Stanwood Police Department. This particular method is pretty unique. We haven't seen that one before. A Wells Fargo branch in Stanwood was able to capture video of Stewart, although he also hit more than a dozen other banks. Chief Toner said he was only successful a few of the times out of the many times he tried at area banks. He faces 13 counts of burglary in the second degree. Wow. Fishing for money. God be with you. There's always a penalty for early withdrawal. And police in Texas captured an alligator found lurking next to an ATM and hissing at customers making withdrawals. The Lake Worth Police Department said in a Facebook post that a woman who used the ATM reported hearing a hissing sound while withdrawing money. The officers arrived to find a 3.5-foot alligator lurking next to the machine. A Texas Parks and Wildlife game warden was summoned to the scene and helped the officers subdue the alligator. It was relocated to an appropriate habitat nearby. Here's what the cops said to the game warden via their body cams.
We've never seen a gator outside of the lake, ever.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought he would have come up this far.
We thought it came from somebody's yard or something.
What's that?
Well, I've never seen a gator that wasn't shoes or a wallet. Again, there's always a penalty for early withdrawal. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a Southwest Airlines pilot helming a flight to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, recently took to the plane's intercom to threaten to return the aircraft to its departure gate at the airport if passengers didn't stop sending nude photos to him via iPhone's AirDrop feature. Through AirDrop, iPhone users are able to send digital files to other Apple products in close range without using Wi-Fi or cellular data. In a viral TikTok clip shared by TikTok user T. Mars, with more than 2 million views, by the way, you can hear the pilot, like an angry car trip dad, threatened to turn the plane around when passengers inundated his iPhone with nude pictures.
So here's the deal. This continues while we're on the ground. I'm going to have to pull back to the gate. Everybody's going to have to get off. We're going to have to get security involved. And it's vacation that's going to be ruined. So you folks, whatever that airdrop thing is, quit sending naked pictures. Let's get yourself to Cabo.
Receiving unwanted skin pics while on an airplane has unfortunately become part of the traveling experience. You may remember that back in June on show number 0672, we shared a story of a male passenger on another Southwest flight who airdropped a sexually explicit photo to his fellow flyers. Upon landing, police escorted that man off the aircraft. I said then, and I'll say it now, maybe people are overthinking an earlier Southwest Airlines motto.
You're going to love our Southwest spirit.
Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Dr. Michael S. Fenster, better known as Chef Dr. Mike, is one of a handful of physicians worldwide to hold both culinary and medical degrees and is the only interventional cardiologist and professional chef to do so. He is also the only cardiologist with joint academic appointments in both the medical and culinary arts, where he serves as a professor of culinary medicine. And he's on PBS with the show House Calls with Chef Dr. Mike. He joins us via Zoom from Montana. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Peter, great to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the program with us. First of all, a couple of things I want to mention from the introduction that I just gave you, and that is, I know what a cardiologist is. Explain to us, for those who don't know, what an interventional cardiologist is.
Sure. So, as if cardiology wasn't enough of a specialty as a derivative of internal medicine, interventional cardiology is a subspecialty of the specialty of cardiology. And so what that means is we undergo extra years of training. We have a separate board certification in addition to the cardiology board certification that we take. And that extra training and certification allows us to be the ones who, when people are having heart attacks at 2 a.m., we're the ones who get called to go in and do procedures like open those arteries and put those coronary stents you probably heard a lot about inside and restore blood flow and hopefully abort heart attacks.
Excellent. Okay, so as I mentioned, you are both an interventional cardiologist and a professional chef. When you were going to school, you just couldn't make up your mind? Is that how it worked?
Actually, the cooking came first, believe it or not. So it's one of those interesting things. My mom was a great home cook, so I was very often in the kitchen, kind of helping her, and developed a love of food, and especially kind of sourcing food. I grew up in the New York, New Jersey area, and at that time, New Jersey really was the Garden State with all these roadside stands and local bakeries and things like that. So really grew up with a love of food, a love of cooking. And then to help pay for college, then the food industry, the professional food industry, was a very logical entry point for me. I actually started in the food industry as a dishwasher for 6 months before I got a chance to be a junior person on the line and then work my way up so that by the time I left college, I was what we would call today an executive chef running the back of a local restaurant. Went off to medical school, became an interventional cardiologist, eventually actually went back to culinary school and have a degree in gourmet cooking and catering from Ashworth University, and then really worked over the years and decades since for these passions to come together in the creation and celebration of culinary medicine.
So how has your work as a cardiologist, how has that infused what you do as a chef?
Well, that's a great question, Peter. So kudos to you to getting to the heart of the matter right away, as it were. And really, it's shifted the perspective a little bit. As a chef, as a professional culinary person, we're really focused in the moment. So my goal, my job, my passion as a chef is that when you come into my restaurant, I want to give you just a fantastic food experience, from the ambiance to the food to everything that surrounds that food event, that food experience, and maximize your pleasure in the moment. Unfortunately, sometimes that means that we're not really looking with an eye towards the longer potential health implications of what I'm serving you with regards to what's on your plate. And so with culinary medicine and because, heart disease is the number one killer of Americans, and many people in industrialized countries around the world, heart disease is a focus when we look at preventive health, when we look at diet, and especially when, as the American Heart Association and other organizations note, 80% of heart attacks can be prevented with lifestyle modifications like culinary medicine. We want to shift that perspective a little bit and give pleasure not only in the moment with what we're eating to make sure that from a culinary perspective, it's absolutely delicious. You love it. You're not even thinking about health. You're just so enamored of the pleasure and deliciousness of the food, but that these things actually sustain your body, mind and spirit, and bring health and wellness over the long term. So that's really the difference in the focus. It's a really more of a temporal difference, and of course that means adding things like looking at the health implications of what we eat, because diet is so powerful and important in terms of the chronic disabilities and diseases that really plague modern Western nations.
And the term culinary medicine is also one that we haven't heard a lot of.
This is true, and I think you'll be hearing a lot more about it. Certainly, if I have anything to say about it, you will. And it is very different. Many people say, "Oh, Chef Dr. Mike, that's so great. I'm so glad to see somebody, with your background doing nutrition, etc." And really, certainly, nutrition is part of what we do, but culinary medicine is so much more. And as you heard me emphasize, we're really looking at not just nutrition, but all of the elements that go into that food experience. And that even includes sustainability when we look at sourcing our food, for example. How is it raised? How does that impact us? How does it impact the planet? So all these sorts of things and many other kind of softer edges of the food experience, how we eat the food, with whom we eat the food, etc., impact our health in one way or another.
I'm glad you brought up how the food is cultivated itself, because that's another thing that people are talking more and more about these days. What are your concerns when it comes to how our food is collected, or in the case of either plant life or livestock, how it's raised?
That is the key component. As a chef, I'm all about sourcing the food in a manner that brings it the most flavor, gives me the best product that I can use, whether it's plant, animal, or fungi. And I think, unfortunately, one of the things that concerns me is this real emphasis on plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. Certainly, we do need to eat more plants. Let me make that very clear. I'm a big believer in that. But getting mono crop, industrial, agriculturally produced, plant-based food that is ultra processed, which is one of the main problems in the U.S. diet and the diet of other industrialized nations, does not actually make it necessarily a healthier from an individual perspective as a human being, or healthier in terms of creating a healthier planet than, say, a grass-fed, pastured bison, a burger, from somewhere else. So we really have to do a better job, I think, in terms of educating and getting to beyond sort of the fluff and sound bites in looking at how we source our food.
So if you were able to wave a magic wand, how would large manufacturing companies that we know and deal with every day in our supermarket aisles, how would they be different?
Well, I think that they would look towards supporting, for example, regenerative agricultural efforts. And this really what is done. There's a model, for example, in Brazil, over 50% of their eggs come from a producer who uses regenerative agriculture. And by that, I mean that they have livestock. So it's really recreating the environment, the ecosystem that we see occurring in the natural world. Plants don't exist in isolation on fields that are loaded with fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides, etc. There's an environment, there's an ecosystem that functions. And so this method of agriculture, which is sustainable and profitable, as they have proven in Brazil, simply replicates the natural ecosystem of nature, so that they have chickens that eat bugs and plants and seeds, and chicken poop fertilizes the earth that helps the plants grow. And then they plant companion plants around there that bring in the pollinators, etc. And then we're able to not only harvest adequate amounts of food to feed our global population, but unlike industrial monocrop agriculture, which still produces net carbon into the atmosphere, regenerative agricultural processes actually sequester carbon into the ground. So they're taking it out of circulation. And so that's a very important distinction. And I think that these mega producers, even if they contracted locally with smaller producers who are now exploring these operations, and we work in a more cooperative and less of a competitive manner, we could really bring these types of products to the public in quantities that make a very meaningful difference.
Wow, I could talk to you all day, but we're just about out of time. And I do want to bring up two things very, very quickly in about the minute and a half that we have left, and that is I mentioned your PBS show House Calls with Chef Dr. Mike. Tell us very quickly about that. Give us the elevator pitch.
Sure. It's a 30-minute series. And if you ever watch those shows where they're fixing up houses, and then flipping them, or Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, where he helps failing restaurants. We help failing people meet their food challenges, and applying the principles of culinary medicine really help transform their lives.
Excellent. And you also have a book out called Food Shaman, The Art of Quantum Food. Tell us very quickly about that.
And so that really goes into the detail for the nerds in the audience who want to know a lot more about culinary medicine and the science behind all the things you and I talked about today. That's the book for them.
Excellent. Your mom must be proud.
I would hope that after all the grief I gave her as a child, when I look back, and as a parent myself now, that she can smile down upon me from heaven and say, well, you didn't turn out too bad, son.
Actually, since you are a parent yourself, I ask one very quick question, and that is, how do you keep the sweets and treats and things that we're not supposed to have away from your kids? Or did you do that? Or is everything allowed in moderation?
I don't, if you're having a celebration, you want to have a piece of cake, have a piece of cake. A cake, or a sweet every now and then is not a bad thing, but they can't be the mainstay of your diet. So I'm very big with my kids that I never, ever told them they had to eat the way that I eat, but I do the cooking. And so gradually, believe it or not, as a teenager who feasted on fast foods, as many teenagers do, my daughter right now is like, I can't even go into those restaurants because the smell of them make me sick. And never once did I tell her she couldn't have anything.
Fascinating stuff indeed. Mike, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you, Peter. It's been a real treat. Thank you so much.
Chef Dr. Mike. His book is called Food Shaman, The Art of Quantum Food, and his PBS show is House Calls with Chef Dr. Mike. For the TV show, you can check your local listings, and you can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0681, and you'll find the link to Mike's site, and you'll also find links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram. From Montreal, Canada, and spanning the globe like a butterfly on speed, this is The Stuff File with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to entrepreneur and philanthropist Josef Azam. Plus, we'll meet a guy who pushed a peanut up a mountain with his nose. We also have an idiot of the day coming your way a little later on, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. 60-year-old Dwayne Hansen has fulfilled a long-held dream of his, to paddle the Missouri River in a pumpkin. On August 27th, Hansen set out in an 846-pound pumpkin for the 38-mile float on the Big Muddy to celebrate his 60th birthday. Said Dwayne, "I've been dreaming about this. This has been a 5-year journey to get a pumpkin that's big enough." Hansen grew the pumpkin himself. His wife named it Berta. Well, one way or another, he's out of his gourd. Anyway, we have a couple of stories that can come under the headline of Naked, Not Afraid. We start off with a story from August 20th when New Hampshire Fish and Game officers, along with a member of the U.S. Forest Service, were called to an Appalachian Mountain Club hut in Bethlehem to confront 35-year-old Brian Chevrier. Around 6 p.m., Chevrier was found atop the hut, naked, where he had been threatening hikers. Officers said he was highly agitated. Chevrier descended from the roof of the hut at around 10 p.m. and was escorted to the Zeeland Trailhead parking lot where he was taken into custody. 4 hours naked on top of a hut at night. Did anybody think to spray him with honey, turn on the floodlights, and let the bugs have at him? Yeah. Meanwhile, Amanda Keene of Providence, Rhode Island, headed out for work in the early hours of August 22nd with her earpods in, listening to a true crime podcast. On her 45-minute trip to Easton, Massachusetts, she stopped for gas. It wasn't until she arrived at her workplace, Honeydew Donuts, that she discovered a stowaway in her back seat. Said Amanda, "I hear moaning. I roll down my window because I want to check outside, and I realize it was not coming from outside my truck. It was coming from inside of my truck." Tucked on the floor in the back seat was 21-year-old Jose Osorio of Providence. He was mostly naked. Police said he was extremely intoxicated and admitted later that he also consumed marijuana. He was charged with breaking and entering a vehicle. Keene was unhurt, but was so mad. She said, "If he had made noises or popped up while I was driving, I could have crashed." No, Amanda, I'm putting the onus on you for this one. You were driving for almost 45 minutes with your earbuds in listening to true crime. And because of that, you almost became part of true crime. Let that be a lesson to you. A couple getting married in Glacier National Park in Montana had their nuptials interrupted when a grizzly bear attacked a moose calf 50 yards away from the ceremony. The ceremony took place beside the tourist-popular Two Medicine Lake. Meanwhile, a ravenous grizzly bear was waiting for a moose and its calf to cross its path. With just 20 seconds left in the groom's vows, the bear, according to the videographer, charged out of the brush onto the north shore and attacked a moose calf. We had spotted the moose and calf 10 minutes before, moving briskly through the forest further up the mountain. The bear must have been chasing them for at least a little bit. Yeah, this is truly a day the two lovebirds will never forget.
If there is anybody here who objects today to this wedding, please speak now or forever hold your peace.
You know, this might be a sign to call this whole thing off. And finally, middle school and high school kids riding a school bus in Jacksonville, Florida, were mighty perturbed when their bus was passed by a wheel that had fallen off the bus. The driver was able to stop safely and the bus was taken out of service for inspection. The problem was an isolated maintenance issue, claimed the company contracted to provide the bus service, which was Student Transportation of America. Said Duval County Public Schools in a statement, "We are aware of this incident. We have already been in contact with Student Transportation of America." They added that the company would check all of its buses because we find this unacceptable. 2 days later, the same driver on the same route with some of the same passengers, but on a different bus, was alerted by the kids screaming. It happened again.
The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all through the town.
Well, not all of them. By the way, has anybody checked to see if the driver has a tire wrench in his back pocket or a pocket full of lug nuts? Just asking. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Josef Azam is a pretty amazing guy. He's a self-made businessman who has not only worked hard for himself, but has worked just as hard to give back to the underserviced youth of our society who often live in either poverty, tough neighborhoods, or both. And his focus is not just here in our own hometown of Montreal. Joe is doing things on a global scale. He joins us via Zoom from here in Montreal. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Peter. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. So, first of all, let's go back a step. As I mentioned, you're in business. What business are you in, and what made you decide that you wanted to not only help yourself, but help others?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I have a digital marketing agency. We've been around for about 15 years. I also have investments in restaurants and a couple other projects. And it's amazing. I love it. I love business and entrepreneurship. And to be 100% transparent, I would say that the first 10, 12 years of my career was really just dedicated towards building a business and in all honesty, making as much money as possible. I think that, I'm from quite humble beginnings. As a young kid, the dream was always to not be poor anymore. So obviously I gravitated to business and built something quite successful. However, a couple of years ago, I had hit a bit of a personal wall. I had achieved what I wanted in business. I got a beautiful house, in-ground pool, vacations, and fancy car, everything that I would think would bring me happiness. And I felt quite empty. I felt empty. I think a huge part of it was because I was disconnected to the community that I had once grown up in. And so I really had to take a step back and reevaluate what I was doing with my life. And that's really how the ball started to roll, and just me getting involved in different community organizations. And it started very local, and then I started giving some courses at John Abbott, and then after that evolved into me speaking to all these organizations all over North America and even a bit in Europe.
Now, you mentioned humble beginnings. How did your humble beginnings shape you when it came to business, and also shape your philanthropic nature?
Well, it's funny you say that. So if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I probably would have said, well, I was poor and I wanted a lot of stuff. And so, it pushed me towards business because that's where I thought I could be the most successful in terms of finance. However, I read actually a recent article, I believe it came out in the New York Times, where it had stated that one of the fastest ways for young kids to move up in terms of income levels is because of their connection with people of the higher income status or higher income levels. So I think really what inspired me, and really this was subconsciously, is I grew up in an affluent area, which is, west of Montreal, even though I was in a pocket where the vast majority of the people were lower income, but I was surrounded with successful people. And so even though I may have not had a lot of contact with them, I saw that people that seemed to have success had businesses. And so that's what really, I would say, drove me in terms of what I wanted to do. In terms of my drive, I mean, I'm sure we've all heard the analogy, hard times breed strong people breed easy times will breed weak people. And I think that, I'm a product a bit of my environment in a positive way, which is every bit of struggle that I had was the fuel that pushed me later on in life. So it's hard in the moment to see what struggle will do. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it was. It's the ability to not want to be in that economic situation that really pushed me hard at the beginning stages of my career.
I've seen you talk about your background. I've seen you talk about your family, your dad. Full disclosure, we are in the process of perhaps working on a project together.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know, I mean, you mentioned that adage about being strong and being weak. And I'm just concerned, your drive, you now have children. And your children now live in an affluent world. Do you worry about them not being able to do the things that you have done because of the background you came from?
That's such an important question. It's something that is my biggest fear. And I speak about this to my wife all the time, because we all want the best for our kids, right? We want them to have everything we didn't have. And so now I have these two incredible children that live in a beautiful house, that go on multiple vacations a year, that go to restaurants every week, that they don't have the stress of taking the bus like I did when I was younger, and cars stalling in the middle of the street, and having financial worries. They don't have any of that. So 100%, I'm very cognizant of it. There's two things that I do specifically with my children to try to keep them as grounded as possible. The first is through sport. I also coach the local wrestling team or the youth wrestling team at Riverdale Wrestling Club here in Montreal. And I believe that, wrestling is such a powerful sport because it's you versus your opponent. It doesn't matter your income level, your status, where you come from, none of it matters. And no matter what, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, you're going to be embarrassed, you're going to have pride. So I try to really ground them through sport. And really the other thing that I do is when I do a lot of the philanthropy, that I do, I try to bring them as much as I can with me. Even sometimes if it's out of town, I'll bring them. I want them to hear me speak. I want them to see how other people live and different kids in the community. And so they can at least have perspective. And it's, and it's funny you even say that or you mentioned that because, and I'm not trying to say anything against private schools because that's not where I'm going with this conversation. But when we were deciding where we wanted to send our children, I had made the choice that I wanted to send them to public school, not private school. And it has nothing to do with money. It doesn't even have to do with the type of education. I really wanted my kids to be with everybody. I wanted them to be with wealthier kids that are lower economically in terms of economic status. I wanted them to be with kids that are great athletes and bad athletes. I wanted them to be with kids with special needs. I wanted them to be with everybody. I didn't want them to necessarily be sheltered in this environment where it's only one type of income class. So I guess those are probably the 2 or 3 ways that I try to keep them as grounded as possible.
Well, in the few minutes we have left, I want to talk about your philanthropy and talk about what you're doing, how far you're going to do this, because like I said, you're not doing it just locally, and how people can be part of what you do.
For sure. So, I mean, what ended up happening, and just so everyone knows, so as I started to give back locally in Montreal, I realized that speaking specifically to underserved youth, kids in underserved communities, and telling them about my story and how I achieved success. And I don't consider myself this ultra intelligent person. I had no connections, no money. How did I get out of poverty? How did I become successful? Was the biggest passion of mine, sharing this story and telling them what they need to do to succeed, or at least giving them advice. And so about 1.5 years ago, I actually set a separate team together at the agency that all they work on is philanthropy for the agency. And so they reached out to organizations all across North America and Europe that fit the types of individuals we want to speak to. So I ended up speaking in the past year to over 5,000 underserved youth. I've spoken with junior achievement centers, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, educational school boards. I mean, you name it, I've probably spoken to it at this point. And I've also gone into these areas like the south side of Chicago, Jacksonville, Florida, very rough, impoverished areas. And it's been the greatest thing that I have ever done in my life. And I say this because there's a selfish aspect to giving, right? You feel good when you give back to somebody. And so when you say, when the question comes along, like, is there an end to this? Absolutely not. I mean, there's no end to it. I want to grow it. I want to inspire other people to give back as well. I think that we live in a world today where, and I've been there, where you chase things for happiness, right? You chase a nicer pair of pants, nicer cars, these types of shoes, we're always chasing. And all that gives us is immediate gratification. And then it just fizzles off very quickly afterwards. And hopefully, I can inspire other people to give back as well. The average person to give back, like myself, right? You don't have to be Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. You can just be a regular person that says, you know what, I have something to offer to these communities.
So how can people find out more about the work you do, and how can they get involved?
Probably the best way. I mean, I always post everything on my social media. Or you can go to my website, josefazam.com. So it's JOSEFAZAM.com. And there's links to, first of all the events that I'm giving. So, I came back from Hawaii recently and I'm speaking in Toronto next week. And then anybody that'd like to get involved, honestly, you can just reach out to me through my social media or my website. And I'm definitely happy to guide you in the right direction of maybe the right organization that potentially you can get involved with. I think that when you ask also, what's the end goal of this? And I know, I mentioned that, potentially we'll work on a project together, but I think that there's 2 things that this vision has sort of come to. One of them is obviously speaking to as many kids as possible and underserved communities and giving back as much as I can. And the other one is really to inspire people to, yes, give back, but also really acknowledge the amazing individuals that work within these communities. I think that I want to be very careful. I don't want people to look at me necessarily like I'm doing something incredibly special, to be quite frank. I mean, I'm a business person. I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I do, 95% of my time. And I do this on the side as something that I'm very passionate about. But there's individuals that have given their lives and souls to communities around the world. And I've met these individuals, and, they're counselors, they're executive directors of non-for-profits, they're therapists. There's these incredible human beings out there that are giving everything to people. And They're not even recognized in this world. You know, we have this, and I'm guilty of it too, right? We apply celebrity to a lot of people that I think are undeserving of it. And I think we're missing the mark. I think we're putting people up on a pedestal that don't necessarily need to be there when we have such phenomenal individuals. You know, I want young kids to be inspired and by these community workers, these social workers, and say, you know what, when I grow up, I don't want to be necessarily a YouTuber or a food critic or whatever it is. I want to be, not there's anything wrong with that, but I want to be someone that's going to inspire the next generation of kids. You know, I think that hopefully the end term result is that we can bring light to these amazing individuals.
Joe, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Entrepreneur and philanthropist Joe Azam. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0681, and you'll find the link to Joe's site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, My Interviews with Two Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, My Interviews with Two Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Actors, authors, quirky guests, and the common folk. It all comes to you here on the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come on the program, we have one more Stuff File news story and, of course, an idiot of the day coming our way. But I'll get to those in a moment because, quite frankly, they're both kind of disturbing. So we'll get to our next guest right now for a moment of levity, shall we? Bob Salem is a man who holds a very unique record. He's only one of 4 people to ever do it, the only person to do it in this century, and the fastest person to do it, taking only 7 days, shaving the record by 1 full day. What Bob has done is to push a peanut up a 14,115-foot mountain with his nose. Bob joins us via Zoom from Colorado. Hi, Bob.
Hi, how's it going?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. You pushed this peanut up Pikes Peak in Colorado with your nose, and the question has to be asked, why?
Okay, well, thanks for talking to me today, Peter, first off. Why? Let's see. It was mostly because it was out there. I was on Facebook. The Michael Mayo from the Manitou Springs Heritage Museum was on Facebook explaining, just exactly, Ulysses doing it in 63 and, the other 3 guys and stuff like that. And he's like, boy, I wish we could find somebody that would do it for the anniversary of Manitou this year because it was the 150th. And I was like, well, I'll do it. And he was surprised. I was surprised. Everybody was surprised.
Now, when I talk to people about the fact that you have done this, they always ask the question why, and also why would someone do this? And I get it. I understand it because, like I said in the introduction, the record was set many years ago and 3 other people did it before them or before you.
Yeah.
What I'm curious to find out, and I guess I don't know if we'll ever know, is why did the first guy do it?
Actually, it was a $50 bet.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bar bet. He was in a bar, and I have no idea how that kind of topic comes up. But, it was a bar bet, and he did finish it, and he did win the $50.
Amazing. Okay, so now you decide to do this, trying to break the record, which you did. Congratulations, first of all, on that.
Thank you.
Is there any way you can practice doing this, or did you just have to start from the bottom, work from the top, and you didn't know how you were going to pull this off?
Honestly, it was just prior to this, it was just me doing a lot of hiking to get used to the altitude and stuff. I did practice a couple of times, I guess you could say because I had a couple other interviews, and I'd go out to the bar trail there, and we'd do a little bit of peanut pushing for them to take pictures of and things like that. So there was, I guess, a little practice. I got an idea of what to do and what not to do. Actually, easier going up the mountain on your hands and knees than it is walking. It takes longer, but it is easier.
Yeah, you managed to shave, as I said, a day off the record. How did you manage to do that?
First off, the other three guys, the first guy, he went up rough up the mountain, no trail.
Okay.
So over boulders, over rocks, and just up the rough mountain. The other guy in 63, he went up the highway. So that's longer, but he was able to get a ride up to where he left off and a ride down back to town because Ulysses was a rockabilly star, and he'd go down to the clubs there and, play a little bit of guitar and stuff like that and, enjoy a little beer and then come back the next day slightly hungover and start pushing the peanut again.
Okay, so that brings up a very interesting point. Did you come back down the mountain anytime during the 7 days?
Yeah, actually, several times. All the way up until I think it was Wednesday, I was coming back down, and I was only doing this at night because it was really super hot. It was really super hot. So I was doing it at night. I had help with my wife. She went up the first couple of days, but by the third day, and once I was up there, I was kind of on my own. So I just had to move the backpack, come back, move the peanut, move the backpack, move the peanut, move the backpack. Then I stayed at Bar Trail for a few hours on Wednesday, and then at the A-frame on Thursday, I slept a couple hours there. But for the most part, after that, I was just pushing.
How much time did you take off between pushing the peanut up the mountain?
Well, the first day, the day we started, actually, the city had me start at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and we actually had a record heat-breaking day. So it was 99 degrees. So I pretty much dehydrated that first day. I didn't make very far. I think I got a mile that first day or something like that, mile and a half. And I actually took the next day off because I could barely even move.
Okay, so the record itself, that's 7 full days. That's the actual time you take to push the peanut up the mountain, correct?
Actually, it was 6 days, 20 hours.
6 days, 20 hours. So how long did it take you in real time to do that 6 days and 20 hours?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. Wow. I would say it was probably a good at least 24 or more hours of actual pushing.
Okay. 24. And yeah. Even though you have survived this arduous task, the peanut did not. You have more than one peanut that you push up the hill, right?
Oh, yeah. I was probably past 24 peanuts. They didn't make it. I even, the first 10 I had, I coated with silicone and stuff. Not silicone, but a plastic spray. And they still wore out pretty fast. I was lucky enough that I had a peanut groupie, I guess you'd call him. He actually, on the third day, he had peanuts that he came up, he was following me. He gave me a whole bunch of peanuts because I was actually running out of peanuts. So
now,
saved the day.
What exactly is the apparatus? Because I've seen pictures of what you've done. What exactly is the apparatus that you use to push the peanut up the hill with your nose, and how did you create this?
It's a CPAP machine mask. So, the thing that, people fall asleep at night and they stop breathing in the middle of the night, and it's a hose, makes sure they're still breathing and stuff. Well, I just took the hose off of it basically and cut the tip off of a plastic serving spoon and shoved the handle in the hole and taped it down, and that was my device right there.
And it makes you kind of look like an alien elephant, right?
It is a little ridiculous looking, yes.
We should also mention that in addition to just simply doing this, there is a great cause behind you. So tell us about the cause and why it's important to you.
Okay. Well, I've got Together and Home at Last. It's a charity organization, and we have historically been trying to put people in low mortgage homes, so it's actually affordable to own a house instead of paying somebody for them to own the house. My little section of the charity is dome homes, and I've come up with a pretty amazing way to build a 4,000 square foot or a 2,000 square foot dome, and it's out of cement. I can actually do that for about 50 cents a square foot.
Excellent. And people can find out more information by going to TAHALAST.org, which is short for Together at Home at Last Incorporated.
That's it.
Does this record now put you in the Guinness Book of Records? Is it official?
Yeah, it would have cost $5,000 basically. Guinness wanted $5,000 to actually have somebody there and make it official. And I did not have $5,000 for that.
But you have the knowledge and the I guess the adoring fans of your community that you have now done this.
Yeah, I'm pretty popular. I've like you guys are in Montreal, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I've done a couple in Australia, a couple interviews in Australia, Germany, Italy. I think there was a couple in England and a few in Canada, and plenty of them here in the United States. So, yeah, it's kind of fun. Everybody is very excited to meet me because my friends have a tendency to, like, for my own work, I work for a company that does cleanouts on houses and stuff. So we go to the flea market and we sell antiques and stuff like that. So my friends are very, very happy to go ahead and tell everybody what I've done because it's kind of a scene and it makes people laugh. So
what was the hardest part of pushing a peanut up the mountain?
The last, I think they're called last 9 golden stairs or 10 golden stairs or something like that. It was the very last part of it. I had run out of water earlier because I didn't bring enough because I wasn't really contemplating, moving my backpack and then having to, do the peanut and then the backpack. So I kind of did the mountain twice. And so I ran out of water. And when I got to the top, I was very concerned I was not going to be awake or coherent when people showed up to interview me.
Well, was there anybody at the top of the mountain there to greet you when you finally finished?
I actually got there just as the sun was rising, and the observatory up there does not open till 7:45 or something. So I had like 2 hours where I kind of had to just lay there and be dry. That's the one thing I think that I did not enjoy was the fact that there's not even any kind of real water available up there at all. You get up there and if you don't have water with you, you're dry until they open the door.
Would you do it again?
Honestly, I guess I would. I would just do it a little better planned this time.
Are any of the 3 people who did it before you still alive?
Yes, Ulysses is. He's the guy who did it in 1963. He'll be coming into Manitou Springs here, I think next month or the month after or something. And they're going to do a little interview with him and me and do a little display in the museum for it.
Did you have any opportunity to talk to any of the people who did this before you went up?
Yeah, actually, I talked to Ulysses once before I went up, and we had a little conversation on the phone. It was informative. I had some good clues. I actually changed the way I was going to do it because of what he said, so it was very worthwhile to talk to him.
What was the biggest piece of advice that you received from him?
To not try and be all the way up on my hands and knees. I got to be down and try and either low crawl or at least be, on my elbows because otherwise it was too difficult. And he was right. I had to get down there next to the peanut.
Would you think of doing this on any other mountain than Pikes Peak in Colorado, or is this the only place you'd want to do it if you ever did it again? Actually, I had inquired as to whether the Tower 1 in New York would be acceptable to me going up the stairs pushing a peanut, maybe before or after the firemen. I had never gotten a response on that one, though. Bob, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us, and congratulations on your feat and also on raising money for a very good cause. Thank you very much. And anybody wants to, go to the website and donate, I'd really appreciate the assistance. Bob Salem, who pushed a peanut up a mountain with his nose. You can go to my website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0681, and you'll find the charity that Bob is talking about, which is Together and Home at Last Incorporated, whose mission statement is seeking to end family homelessness through affordable housing in the United States. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. As mentioned, I've got one more Stuff File news story to share with you, and both of these stories, this story and the Idiot of the Day, they hail from Florida, and as I mentioned earlier, are highly disturbing. So let's get to the first one. The Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff's Office Human Trafficking Squad has been conducting regular sting operations to find men trying to buy sex online, especially from minors. That was the focus of the most recent sting. A deputy posing as a father trying to sell access to his 14-year-old daughter, said Sheriff Chad Cronister. It's concerning that the response that we had was pretty overwhelming. As usual, the minors were actually cops. The sheriff didn't name one man arrested in the stings, but he noted that the 34-year-old man was on his honeymoon and had snuck out of his hotel room while his bride was sleeping. Ew! Wow! On his honeymoon! I'll bet his bride has her eyes wide open now. Anyway, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Again, slightly disturbing. A Palm Harbor man was arrested on multiple counts of child porn possession after deputies said he admitted to viewing child pornography during a pre-employment screening with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Yes, you heard right. Detectives began investigating 29-year-old Robert Luth after he admitted to viewing child porn in a Pinellas County Sheriff's Office pre-employment polygraph. The sheriff's office said Luth was applying for a job with the agency. Once detectives were given a search warrant for Luth's phone, they found several child pornography files on his device. Luth was arrested and charged with 5 counts of possession of child pornography. It pains me to even say this, but why? Oh, why? If you're looking for a job with the police department, would you submit yourself to a lie detector test where you would have to admit to criminal activity? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0681. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0681. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter as PA Holder, and don't forget to check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, TrueTalkRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, MediaCore in Singapore, WLSLLP FM in Dade City, Florida, Free 99 in Tyler, Texas, CKUW FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Always remember this very timely piece of advice. Good news is just life's way of keeping you off balance.